Welcome to Bethany. This is our first episode. So some of you might be asking, what is Bethany? Well, Bethany is, of course, a place, and we are taking the same setting that is found in the Bible when Jesus was in Bethany, which is very close to Jerusalem. He was visiting with his friends Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. So they were spending time together, they were having dinners, they were having wonderful conversations. I presume not much of that has been recorded, only 2 stories made it to the Gospels. And I'm proposing to you the same attitude, non-threatening, rather friendly. I'm not going to tell you what to take out of the readings. I will try to inspire you by asking questions that might be helpful to you in order to feed your own spirituality. Myself, I'm Father Chris Piasta. I am a pastor of St. Bonaventure, St. Benedict de Moor Parish in South Jamaica, Queens, in the Diocese of Brooklyn. So all the readings, most of the Sundays will be, of course, the same, but sometimes we might be differing from other parts of the United States or even the world. So let's jump into the first episode, the first Sunday that we do that. It is the 23rd Sunday of Ordinary Time, Year C, and today we have 3 incredible readings. The first one, which is coming to us from the Book of Wisdom. If you are looking into any of the Protestant Bibles, you will not find the Book of Wisdom there, simply because the Protestants are following what the Jews considered to be inspired books, or as we called canonical books. And that's why Book of Wisdom and quite a few others did not make it to their Old Testamental list of canonical books. Ourselves as Catholics, we do find the Book of Wisdom in our Bibles, and thus we read it this Sunday. So what is that book? Actually, sometimes it is being called the Wisdom of Solomon, and that is quite misleading because Solomon had nothing to do with this book. We know that he didn't write the book. He simply could not have written the book because he lived approximately 1,000 years earlier than the book was written. That's number one. And number two, the book was written in Hellenistic Greek, which Solomon did not speak. So we now know, although sometimes what you're going to find in the book, it sounds as if it was Solomon speaking to us, but he really isn't. So let's look into this book, this first reading rather, from the 9th chapter, verses 13 through 18b. And basically the question, the overarching question of that first reading is, who can conceive what the Lord intends? I mean, how many times have we been thinking that, okay, that's exactly what God wants for me. That's where he's leading me. Well, so did Elijah sometimes thought, and then that he kind of was changing his mind because it was contradictory. But how can we really know when we get something from God? So a couple of questions I would like to give you based on the first reading. Obviously, you can find the link to those readings underneath the video and check it out for yourself. I'm not going to be reading that for you. But a couple of questions that might be helpful for you to feed your own spirituality, such as, for example, what gives you certainty in your life? Where do you take it from? Where do you derive certainty in your life? Or what is the source of your decision-making process? How do you go about that? Do you make references to others, to other sources? Or do you just trust your own instincts, your own gut, your own conviction? What is it that steers your mind and heart towards making decision this or a different way? Maybe a little bit more practical question. Do you sleep on things? Do you sleep on those questions? Or are you trying to rush into making decisions because you feel for whatever reason, excuse me, some kind of a pressure coming to you. So how do you go about your decision-making process? And then, even let's make it a little bit more complicated. What do you do when you're uncertain? When you really don't know what to do? What is your plan B? Or what is your path towards finding a solution to your problem? And finally, maybe that's what it all boils down to. That's the overarching question that many of us may be trapped by. Who do we trust more? Do we trust more ourselves? Or we trust more God? Maybe in what circumstances? When? How? Who do I trust more? That's the first reading, again, from the Book of Wisdom. Moving to the second reading, again, if the first one was kind of interesting, the second one, I think it's going to be even more interesting, because the second reading, of course, from the New Testament, is coming to us from Paul's letter to Philemon. And that is quite interesting, because not only that we don't read that letter too often, and one of the reasons is, it's a very short letter. That short that does not even have chapters and only has verses. So this Sunday we are reading verses 9 through 10 and 12 through 17. The background of that story, or the background of that reading is quite interesting. So Paul is very good friends with Philemon, to whom he writes the letter. And Philemon owns a slave. You have to realize that that was quite normal back in the days, in the antiquities. So Philemon owns a slave whose name is Onesimus. Now, that slave decided to run away from Philemon. Not a good thing. By the way, back in those days, they even had a special police that would be searching for fugitive slaves. So one of them, apparently, is Onesimus, and he runs to Paul. Of course, he likes to stay with him, and he even wants to be baptized by Paul. But now the situation is even more interesting, because Paul finds himself in some kind of a conundrum. Philemon, after all, is my friend. And why would I keep this slave for myself, knowing that that slave belongs to Philemon? So he concocts, in a sense, a very interesting solution to the problem, or at least he thinks that this is going to be a solution to the problem. He writes this letter, and he gives this letter to Onesimus, before mentioned slave, and he tells him, now you go back to Philemon, go back to your owner, go back to where you belong. You can already imagine how eager Onesimus is to go back. But Paul thinks and hopes and trusts that because Onesimus likes him and acknowledges him, and he's inspired by Paul, he will actually do that. But that's only the first step. Because the second step is that Paul hopes that upon Onesimus' arrival at Philemon will actually set him free. He will no longer keep him as a slave. Quite a stunning development here. Obviously, we are not finding ourselves in any of such predicaments or circumstances that all three of them are finding themselves in. Yet, I think that the story can be quite inspirational, especially having in mind that Onesimus is believed to be one who actually collected all the letters of St. Paul. So the way Paul treated Onesimus and subsequently Philemon was very important for the future of our faith. So here's the couple of questions that at least come to my mind when I read or recall to myself that story. How do I process my free will? Right? Do I even acknowledge the fact, or maybe we can even go a little bit deeper than that. Am I thankful to God for my free will? Or do I just take it as a given? Well, I have it. So what's the point here, right? How do I process my own free will? Then the second question is, obviously, because in both cases, Onesimus and Philemon's, there was a certain sacrifice here. So now the question is, when I compromise, do I go back in my memory and regret it or regurgitate it and reanalyze that because of the price that I had to pay for whatever it was associated with my free will? Or if we were to place ourselves in the shoes of Philemon, who received back his slave Onesimus, I think that we are sometimes in a situation, and I don't necessarily refer here only to parents, but in certain circumstances, we are receiving, just like the father in the story, our own prodigal sons. We are relating to people who owe us something, or who are subsequent to us, maybe because they are working underneath ourselves, or we have certain power of leadership over them. How do I treat these people when they do something wrong? Or simply, how do I treat my neighbor when he or she comes to me asking for forgiveness? What is my reaction? What is my response to it? And am I ready to find peace in my heart? Right? Because it's easy and simple to kind of go back, to regurgitate, to accuse ourselves of doing something wrong, or maybe thinking how stupid I was because I made such a decision, or I treated so and so in such or such way, right? So, am I ready to find peace, or how do I find peace in my heart, and carry it with me wherever I go, right? Can I simply close down certain chapters in my life of certain encounters? Also those who might be very inconvenient, tough, painful. How do I go about that? I think that story might be quite influential for us to find a couple of answers for ourselves when it comes to this sort of things. And finally, let's move to the gospel. Today we are reading Luke's gospel, the 14th chapter, verses 25 through 33rd. It's a famous classical story that we probably are thinking about quite often. It is a story of or almost it sounds like a commandment, right? When Jesus says, if you don't hate your father or mother, you cannot be my disciple. Harsh words. And then he goes on to say, when you are to build something, don't you calculate the cost? Or if you are to find a battle, don't you look at how many soldiers you have versus your opponent, and you calculate your budget, what is your response, what your response is supposed to be in certain circumstances. And that brings me, and of course you may go your own way, but that brings me to a couple of questions I would like to suggest for you to consider What is more important to me in my life? And I'm just going to throw a couple of sources of importance or references of importance in life, such as money, health, popularity, influence, happiness, control, or simply having things my way. Even in my relationship, right? And where's God in that? But also, do I see my discipleship as something that not only may, can, but also sometimes must bear a cost? Or am I being distracted or turned down once I see a certain cost that is associated with my discipleship? How do I look at that? Or maybe let's move a little bit further than that. Are you really free while following Jesus? Does it free you up? Does it make you feel better, happier than otherwise? Or you see it as a burden? You see it as something that, I don't know, saddens you, that makes you tired, that is bringing some negativity because God demands certain things of ourselves. Or maybe let's go a little bit more practical in those thoughts and questions. What have you recently sacrificed for someone else? Have you ever sacrificed anything substantial for someone else? Why? Or why not? Or why haven't you sacrificed even something not that big for someone else? What was the reason of your obstruction? Was it because your schedule would be shaken and disturbed? Was it something else? What was it that prevented you from sacrificing something for someone else? And if you did sacrifice or did not sacrifice for someone else, how did it make it feel at that time? And how does it make you feel now? Is there any process? Is there anything that is happening since that time? Maybe that's something that is haunting you or has been haunting you for quite some time, and you don't know how to get out of this. Is there something like that in terms of your sacrifice for someone else? What is it in reference to people that you know? It could be your family members, friends, colleagues, your neighbors, whoever, that you have done in the past, but now you promise you will never do it again. What is it? And why? Why have you promised to yourself, I'm never going to do it again? Maybe even you used more profound statements such as, how could I be so stupid? I'm never going to be that stupid again. Or maybe let's flip it and ask different sorts of questions. Are you truly grateful when others sacrifice themselves for you? Truly grateful. Well, obviously, we do have our ways of saying thank you and show some appreciation, even in limited form. But are you truly grateful inside? That's what matters, I think, because the ways we express that might be somewhat imperfect, and we are imperfect, and some people are better in it, some people are worse in it. But what happens inside, that's what really matters. It doesn't even matter when others sacrifice themselves for you, or you just take it as a given because of who you are, because of that's how it's supposed to be. Think about it. And how does it make you feel? And based on that, would you like to change anything in your relationship, in your response to people that sacrifice themselves for you? What would you like to improve or avoid? What would be a way for you to get better in it? Maybe to truly show your appreciation, to really give them a sense that what they have done or what they are doing does not go unnoticed, quite the opposite. It really is something that changes you deeply inside. So these are the questions I have for you this Sunday. Next Sunday I'll have others. Don't try to rush with those questions. Take them very friendly. Maybe you don't have to answer all of them right away. Maybe one or two might be something that just simply hit your spot. I hope that your presence in Bethany is going to give you some advantage. It's going to improve your spiritual life and will make you a better disciple of Jesus Christ. And I invite you to come back next Sunday and peek into the meeting here in our Bethany. God bless you.